All right. U.S. government spending, what's happening here in the next couple of years. We hear a lot about the Doge and the things that the U.S. government is reducing spending, but I think less often we're talking about what they're increasing in spending, especially if you're selling to the government, if you're an account executive working for a company selling to the government. We need to know what the government is forecasting for increased spending, and they're going to be increasing a lot of spending. Right. And one of those areas that we're going to see a lot of increases is the infrastructure that is going to be supporting AI, right? So these data support centers, high performance computing support services, things around, basically, these are the centers that are supporting the AI infrastructure. It takes a lot of horsepower to run those things. Right, where we're staying away from things that we know that this administration is not going to be spending on, right? So we know there's a lot of oversight now on consulting services being sold to the government, right? Not to be confused with consulting services where a lot of people in GovClose, for instance, are helping companies sell to the government. That's separate. Another thing is DEI, right? We know that this administration is spending less and trying to get rid of things related to DEI, wind and solar. Like, these are areas that I'm probably not going to be focusing on as a business owner or when I'm advising companies. But some areas that they are going to be focusing on is these data support services, high performance computing support services. And let's just talk about some of the things that they're buying and why, by the way, why are we bullish on this? Why do we think that the government's going to be spending more here? Well, we've got two things to look at. One is we've got what the administration's saying they're going to spend on. But, if you follow us and you've seen our videos on YouTube or LinkedIn, wherever you're watching this, you know that I always go to the data. I want to know exactly what the government's spending on, not necessarily the talking points. I want to look at the numbers. So today we're going to look at the numbers. We're going to look at exactly what the government spent on last year. And I'm going to show you exactly what agencies, what offices. If you're interested in selling these services, if you're a company selling these services, you're going to know exactly how to do it and how to be better focused, how much you can make, how much they're spending. And we're going to take a look at, some of the ways that the government actually buys these things. But let's talk about, how I'm going to actually break this down and what documents, what signals I'm seeing as to why the government's going to increase spending in these areas. So there's two essential pieces of information you can take a look at. One is President Trump's AI action plan, and the other one is the July 2025 executive order on accelerating data center permitting. Now, these directives are making the data centers that are supporting things like AI a national priority, right? So we just, politics aside, we have to understand where the spending's going and keep that in the back of our minds whenever we're looking at what products and services to sell to the government, how we're advising companies, or how you're going to, vector your company. So, and specifically, we're talking about the massive infrastructure that is supporting this. So there's a big services component to this. And we're talking about kind of AI optimized server farms, essentially. And to see where the spending's concentrated, there's a few ways, and you guys probably know, that we can look through the data. Now, you're probably used to seeing me go through like usaspending.gov, which is a free government tool that illustrates some of the spending. I'm not going to do that today. We have our own tool that we've built to go through the data much more specifically. And I want to give you some of those results today. Now, lots of ways to dissect federal spending, right? Today, I'm going to look at two particular codes of spending. One is data center support services, and the other is high performance computing support services. And we're going to do a compare and contrast on those two. So you're going to get a good sense of, what do those codes mean? What do they entail? And how much money is being spent? Who's doing the spending? The exact offices. How about this? Average number of offers coming in per solicitation. So there's a lot coming up there. Let's take a look at what are some of the examples of contracts, right, that we're talking about. So this could be, so for one of the codes we're dissecting here, large scale federal data centers. We're looking at Migration of legacy infrastructure to the hybrid cloud, right? So if you're familiar, there's going to be there's a lot actually moving to the cloud. And of course, we can talk about FedRAMP and some other things on a different live session. Migration of legacy infrastructure, installation and monitoring of enterprise racks, power distribution, right? So that's kind of setting up these data centers, which I've done on the Air Force. By the way, Rick Howard, a former government acquisitions officer, I managed $82 billion in federal contracts for the Air Force and Department of Defense. One of the things I did while I was in the Air Force is I had to build one of these minor data centers for our research facility. Compliance and cybersecurity always applies to this type of thing. A couple other things I'm going to jump right in and showing you guys the data. Systems engineering for these environments, support for AI modeling and training environments, integration of supercomputers, research support. So, I mean, look, I could probably keep going here for the next hour just on the types of contracts that are going to fall under this spending. But instead, why don't we get right into it here? Let me see here if I can share my screen. We're going to look at IT and telecom, high performance computing support services first. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. By the way, feel free to jump in here and make comments and whatnot. What do we got here? We got Mark. Thanks for jumping in here. Josh, thanks for jumping in. One second here. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Now, if you guys are having a problem hearing me, let me know. If someone could just do a quick comms check in the comments so I know that you're hearing and seeing everything. All right. I'm going to get rid of this banner. All right. So what we're looking at here is now what I did is I ran the numbers. This is looking back at fiscal year 24. Okay. Now, fiscal year 24, I wonder if I can make this any bigger here. Here we go. So fiscal year 24 spending on IT, telecom, high performance computing support services. We talked a little bit about what this is going to be covering, earlier, and why we think that it's going to increase spending, in the future years here. But I wanted to show you the past spending because we can look at the data. We can ignore the talking points, which sometimes get exaggerated, and just look at what's actually happening. So FY24, $401 million spent with a ceiling value on these awards of $28 billion. Okay, 430 awards, average award size 1.4 million. Here's one that you don't see very often. Average number of offers coming in per solicitation, 3.2, right? That's really low. just in case you're wondering. So that is a low number of average offers. So that's something that, when I'm doing this with clients, that is something that we really focus on, which is, how competitive is this space? We really want to understand that when we're especially approaching it for the first time. But even if not, by the way, we can break that down by agency. We can break it down by sub-agency. We can break it down by office. So I could look at 100 different offices that are buying these services and tell you which one's the most competitive. I might even do that on this call. We'll see if you guys even care about that. Okay, this is just a list of, hey, what are some of the things that this includes? If you guys can see, we're talking about software and technical labor, AI model training platforms, systems upgrades for NASA, integration of GPUs, AI accelerators. So these are the type of services, that support services that we're talking about. And again, we're looking at last year's spending to get an idea of what the baseline is so we can predict the coming years, right? And this is also how, by the way, in the GovClose program, if you're familiar with, you can go check out govclose.com. We have a 1-year program where we train on government contracting, how to sell to the government, and then how to either launch your business or help companies as a consultant or, again, an account executive job selling. But this is how we start with any company, is we build a roadmap based on how the government buys. So these are the numbers that I'm always talking about. This is what you need to understand. Okay, who are the top 5 agencies? Well, we've got Department of Defense at 224 million. Again, this is just last year. Here, by the way, check this out. Average number of offers, 2.9, 184 awards, followed by NASA, Department of State, and then the spending's going down for each consecutive department we're talking about. Though we can see here, as the awards go down, also we see Department of State and Department of Commerce, average number of offers per solicitation, 1 and 2. And we also see the number of awards here, so we have to take that into account. Now, I also like to break it down by the number or by the specific contracting offices, right? So this is blocked for a lot of you guys because you're looking at my mug, but U.S. Army Engineer R&D Center. So for the DoD, 84 million, 53 awards. So the Army Engineering R&D Center, 2.8, that's the average number of offers coming in per solicitation. Again, that's important. Now, I also, just to let you guys know, when we're talking about the average number of offers per solicitation, we can get a false sense of security looking at numbers that different tools give us on that, because, for instance, those numbers get bloated and blown out of proportion sometimes, because if you look at the code, so I've had to go through there's millions of lines of federal spending, but for instance, there are some agencies that will automatically put 999 offers received in zero spending. It's just a glitch in the system, but you have to remove those to actually understand what the true numbers are. The other thing is we're usually not looking at all of these contracts that are awarded don't have the number of offers that were submitted, right? So you need to understand exactly what I was going to try to do here. I can bring up the exact percentage, but you want to understand, hey, is 60% of the awarded contracts, do they have the number of offers? So I might be able to say, hey, roughly 60% of these solicitations have the offers in, the average is 2.1, right? So you want to understand that there is a segment of the awards that you're not going to have the exact number of offers. And that's could be that the agency just didn't, and probably more often than not, the agency just didn't submit that number when they uploaded the data points. Okay, hold on, let me just hit okay, so sound and visuals are good. Thanks, Mark. Hearing and seeing me okay. Thanks, Joe. Department of State, yep. Yeah, if you guys, I'm not going to be in the comments the entire time here, but if you do have questions about any of the numbers that we're seeing and the conclusions we're coming to, you can feel free to throw it in the comments, and we will check that as we're going along here. All right, so let's go back to the numbers. Get rid of that. And I'm just going to, let's make that a little bit easier to see. Okay, moving on. Again, we're still on DB01, and we just identified some of the top offices within the sub-agencies that are actually doing the buying, and how competitive it is, right? So we're seeing that Army Engineer R&D Center is probably who you're targeting, although NASA and Air Force come in second and third with 65 awards and 35 awards. Looks like NASA is a little bit more competitive with 5.9 offers per solicitation on average coming in versus the Army, which is the least competitive at 2.8. So, and there's a lot more information that I would have to see regarding those particular awards, but that just gives you an idea. How about set asides, right? So I'm always looking for this. So if I'm doing this analysis for a specific type of company, I want to know, hey, are you a small business? Are you a large business? That's going to affect potentially who I'm targeting. What's your set aside? This gives you an idea here, right? So if you're for 8As, not a lot. There's just not a lot of spend here in FY24 specific to set asides, meaning it was set aside from the output. That doesn't mean you can't win these contracts if you're 8A or SDV/OSB. It just means that this is what we're seeing that was set aside from the beginning. We got like 4 awards for 8A, 1 for SDV/OSB. So we could see, and this makes sense, right? And this is just a sample, guys, okay? But we could see that the VA is awarding the SDV/OSB set aside contracts, and that makes a lot of sense, right? So whenever I have an SDVOSB business that I'm representing or I'm advising, I'm always looking at the VA first, because the VA is going to award more to the SDVOSB due to their policies on, I think it's called Veterans First, but it makes them look and see if there's a SDVOSB available. Okay, so we're seeing the set-asides are not driving a major amount of spending. Some industries are, okay? So that's something, again, we need to know that, right? Let's take a look at the competition breakdown. Full and open competition clearly is what we're seeing the most of here. So 295 million awarded through full and open. Thanks, Mark. Veterans First. Average number of offers coming in 3.4. We saw 211 awards. Okay, so that's a lot. So that's most of it. So what does that mean? It means that if I am selling to the government, if I'm selling these type of services, I need to be prepared to identify these opportunities early, before the solicitation comes out, because that's where these contracts are won. And we want to know in the market research phase when they're coming out. And so now we are responding to things like sources sought. We're using acquisitions forecast to find the opportunities, setting up meetings with government offices, going to industry days, things like that. We are trying to learn as much as we can about these opportunities so we can put ourselves in the best position later on to win when the solicitation does come out, right? So that is very important. Now, let's take a look here. After this, so we have a few that are non-competed, and simplified acquisitions doesn't, it's 4.3 million. So, well, there's 22 awards. So for small businesses, simplified acquisitions, you could probably pick up a couple smaller awards that way. All right. Subcontracting. We could see here that there's an individual plan for 149 awards. Okay. And that's important to know as far as subcontracting is concerned. Plan not required for about 48 million of these and 46 awards. So a subcontracting plan in place for most of them to one degree or another. You always want to know, is subcontracting going to be an option for the way that you're selling? By the way, I'm looking at something very, very specific here. This is a specific type of service. This could apply to anything. We could be looking at construction, accounting. We could be looking at social media advertising, right? Some of these get a little bit more complicated if you're using keywords of looking something specific, but still very doable. And this could be the exact opposite, right? We might see that in some industries, you know, for some things that people are selling, 90% of it might be subcontracting. We might see that barely any of it is. We might see huge competition. We may see low competition. So these numbers fluctuate depending on what you're selling. The offices you're targeting fluctuate depending on what you're selling, and also depending on what kind of business you are. So again, for DB01, this is the code we're looking at. We see cost plus fixed fee is the top type of contract, which is interesting. If you're following, if you've read like Elon's book or you're looking at anything with the Doge, there's a lot of critique at the cost plus fixed fee model. Cost plus fixed fee basically means that the cost of the contract may fluctuate, but the fee or the profit that the company is going to make is kind of predetermined, and they're going to make that either way. The real criticism is that bigger companies will keep contracts going and have no incentive to reduce the total cost of the contract, whereas a fixed fee contract or a firm fixed price, which, you know, some of the newer defense companies are really advocating for, they get in there, they are trying to reduce the cost, and of course they can also make more profit if they're able to do things faster and cheaper. There's a place for all these models, by the way, guys. Cost plus fixed fee. Where this really matters is if we don't know, right? So if there is a element of we're just not quite sure what direction we're going in. So when I was managing these type of contracts, then cost plus fixed fee is good because we can pivot, we can add to the contract. But if I know, right, let's say we're building a data center, right? And we know exactly what we want, you know, the dimensions of the building, all the equipment that's going to be inside. Like that might be something where we have a fixed price contract, time and materials, labor hours. So you can see here escalating, but it's good to understand how the government's buying and what type of contracts there are. as you're approaching this, right? Because you can study up on it, get good at the proposal writing, and also you have to be profitable, right? All right, what can you make if you're selling to the government? Now, this is just based on looking at some of the companies that have started in this arena, and what these companies are making. So we just have a really simple outlay of 100 to 400K as in year one as a sub versus $1 million to 2 million as a prime. And this is based on actual companies that are out there doing it. 400 to 800K as a sub, 2 million to 6 million as a prime. This is a range, right? And this is what my algorithm put together. So you may be more conservative or less conservative, I guess you could say. I'm pretty conservative when I do these. Year three, 1 to 3 million as a sub. But here's the thing. No matter what I put in here, or anybody tells you as far as earnings, what you can make selling to the government, if you're on your first contract, or if you haven't sold anything to the government, just know this is the long game. This is not the quick win game. Okay. You're looking at 6 to 18 months to win your first contract. You have to plan on that. You have to plan on going after these contracts for a while, and you have to have a plan to do so. Can you make in year 3, 5 to 12 million as a prime? Absolutely. But you probably have to be on the right contract vehicles, right? And I can see that there's some questions coming in here, which we'll try to answer as we go through. All right, so again, there's a ton more data that we could go through here that we've done, but just looking at some of the, what would I come to conclusion? Well, we have Air Force, NASA, Army, engineering, research offices, right? These are the offices within these sub-agencies that are doing the most spending. Partnering with primes, if you're a new or subcontractor holding large IDIQs with subcontracting plans. And this is, by the way, a ton of information I didn't include in here. Like, hey, what are the GWACs and what are the major contracting vehicles that these guys are on, right? That's just an example of this. Set aside targeting, not really that applicable here, right? So, if I saw a ton of spending from the VA on SDVOSBs, I'd say, hey, look, you could partner with an SDVOSB, or maybe your SDVOSB can look at that. And of course, I just threw this in here. This is the GovClose. I don't know what I'm going to name our tool yet. Right now, it's called the GovClose MVP. So that's basically, I can type in a code and produce something that looks like this with a lot more information. I took a lot out of it, actually. So, all right, let's bring that off, because we were going to look at 2 separate codes for you guys, right? Let's take a look at the other one. I'll bring that up here. Maybe some of the, let's see here. Theodore's in here. Hey, Theodore. Yep. So with his company helping IT firms scale federal revenue with precision. Yep. Theodore's been through our program. Guys, head over to govclose.com. Like, seriously, these guys are getting results. Does the DoD recognize CDFM certifications? I build dashboards and other databases for government offices as a W-2 contractor. I would have to look that up specifically. If you're building databases for government offices already in dashboards, I would assume, Gabe, that you're familiar with the cybersecurity certification. I shouldn't even say certification, but the NIST standards and everything that applies to those type of things. I always get nervous is the wrong word, but I guess anybody that is selling an application or anything that would connect to a government network. If I put my government acquisitions hat on, the hardest thing, especially with a new company that was selling something digital that would go on one of our servers or something, is getting an approval to operate for those type of applications, software tools, is difficult. Okay, so one of the things that you'll be asked now is, CMMC and FedRAMP are 2 cybersecurity related certifications, I guess you could call them, right? Difficult to get, costly, right? But now often, especially when I was selling software, one of my first clients ended up selling software for them. One of the first things like the Air Force would ask is, are you guys FedRAMP certified? I don't even think half the time they knew what it meant. Like they had a basic idea of what it meant, right? But that's basically if you're going to host something in the cloud, And are you meeting the different cybersecurity requirements that the government wants? It's a long process, et cetera. But anyway, Gabe, those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. Okay, so we're going to look at data center support services next. Okay, so this is a separate code. I'm going to add this to the stage here. So very similar analysis that we're going to walk through right now. This one, a little bit more spending. So we've got 913.7 million obligated spend for FY24. All right, we've got, hold on, let me, I think I can do a better view here for you guys. I'm not sure if this is actually better or not. We'll see. You guys can tell me. Oh, Gabe, yep. Glad that is helpful. Again, I'd have to look up your specific question about CDFM. If anyone in the audience, we have a few people on here. Someone may be familiar with that. If you can answer and just put it in the comments, that'd be great. All right, $913 million spent in FY24. 25.3 billion ceiling value. So that's a potential, right? So whenever we're looking at ceiling value, just for those not familiar, a lot of the contracts that you see awarded are going to have a ceiling value. You might see a contract with a $5 billion ceiling value. Does that mean that $5 billion will be awarded to the companies that are on that contract? It does not. It means that that's the ceiling of what the government can award under that contract. By the way, guys, if you have questions about any of this, if you go to the YouTube channel, that's just type in GovClose, GovClose. You'll see it. We've got, I think it's over 600 videos, a lot of tutorials on just about everything you could think of for government contracting, from sam.gov, source of SAW proposals, like how the government awards, setting up meetings, all of that. Of course, you can go to govclose.com if you want the training, if you want to join our community. So what do we got here? 871 total awards, 1.6 million average award size. And here's the average number of offers, 2.7. Guys, this is low. Okay, so that is a low average number of offers. And by the way, there are some industries where the average number of offers are like 46. But I also want you to realize that this is not representing every single contract award. This is only an average number of offers of the awards that contained that metric. So for this one here, this one I actually have my spreadsheet up. Let's see here. What I'm going to tell you is, okay. So see this 871 total awards, only 576 of the awards had the offer associated with it. Okay. So of the 564 awards had the number of offers. So the average was 2.8. And for the other ones, they're not included. So you got to understand the numbers when we're looking at these things, right? What are we looking at here? Ceiling value versus obligation. So we can see that there's a lot, big ways to go, right? It's a big difference there. It might not get all the way to the top, but there's a big ceiling. So, and we know with what the government's forecasting, they're forecasting that they're going to spend money on this type of thing. You know they're going to. This is where we're going, guys. These data centers and the support services, this is the place to focus. So if you were focused on wind and solar before, you may want to kind of change your, at least for this administration, you may want to change or hedge your bets a little bit. Okay. And we can also see, I mean, there are other pieces in here. We could see that the multi-agent services dominated by high ceiling, low award task orders, critical opportunities, and pre-positioning on those IDIQ vehicles, right? And again, I didn't include them. I don't think I included them on this one, but I know what they are if you guys message me separately. All that means is pre-positioning on these big vehicles. It means if, let's say NASA SOUP is one of the major vehicles that the Air Force is using, or whatever agency you're targeting, you're going to want to get on NASA SOUP, right? Especially if they're going to increase. We know GSA, they're projecting increases in GSA, not in everything, right? So we got to be careful there. But if we think GSA is going to be a player, then we want to be. That's what's nice about GSA is you can usually just apply if you're to be on the schedules. So if that's a player, you need to find out. This is the type of research we do to find out if we need that. What does PSC DC01 include? O&M services for enterprise scale data centers, high performance computing facility support, on-prem systems, hybrid cloud management, right? We're talking about FedRAMP. Look, security and compliance monitoring, FedRAMP. Go to I would tell everyone, go to FedRAMP. I think it's FedRAMP.gov. Just type it in and go take a look. You can see the timelines involved. You see the companies that are, who are the agencies sponsoring the companies? What companies are FedRAMP certified? There's different levels depending on the level of classification of the network you're on. Each one is going to have, increasing levels of difficulty as far as meeting the security controls, right? So I believe there's low, moderate, and high, and I think they have introduced some new settings as well. Power, cooling, and physical infrastructure support, server migration, managed hosting. There's probably, by the way, I'm sure there's some overlap here between this code and the one we just analyzed. And just so everyone knows, like I've seen the exact same thing awarded under 15 different codes. I've seen things in IT awarded under janitorial codes. I mean, you'd be surprised. Not a lot, but you'd be surprised. So there's going to be spending outside of these codes. And again, we're just looking at fiscal year 24. Okay. Okay. And why does it matter? So small businesses offering IT staffing services like these, physical plant services, et cetera. You can sell directly and you could subcontract as well. All right. Who's doing the buying, right? I want to know who are the top agencies that are buying. Well, probably not surprised. Department of Defense. Then it's followed by DHS, VA, HHS. Department of Defense, this is just last year, 335 million, 3.3 average number of offers that came in. This is just the reason this number is different than the one we saw at the top of the slide deck here is because that was the average of all of the contract awards that had offers. This is just for the DoD, 3.3. But we can also see the DoD has 480 awards compared to the other agencies, 85, 25, 33. DHS, the average number is 2.1. VA, 113 million spent, 2.2. I'd be interested to see what the percentage of this 113 million, how many of these 25 awards went to service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses. Any guesses? I would like to say at least half, but I don't know. It might be further down in here. Something, by the way, I could definitely find out if anyone's interested. I think I have that data available in the original output. So who are the sub-agencies? Army, Navy, and the DHS Office of Procurement. And the top contracting office, that's interesting. So each one of these sub-agencies has multiple offices awarding. So the VA's office, the VA Tech Acquisition Center, is actually the top office. So 12 awards and 3.4 is the average number of offers. That's interesting. Okay, let's keep going through. I might want to add some of the extra VA data to this. Okay. Set-asides that actually pay. So this is broken down by set-aside. So this matters for small business with set-asides, right? So I may target different offices if you have an 8A certification or SDVOSB. In fact, I would. So we can see, let's see here, 8A sole source, there were 7 awards. 8A competed, 13 awards. By the way, this looks a lot different than the last set of data, the last code we looked at, right? Service disabled, veteran-owned small business, 5 awards. That's not a lot. But this, by the way, this doesn't mean, these are not the total amount of awards that went to 8A businesses. These are just the ones that were set aside when the solicitation went out, okay? And then small business set aside, this just means, hey, was it set aside for small business when the solicitation came out? 63 awards. So 63 awards, $16.3 million spent, average number of offers 3.6. Looks like 8A competed had the highest competition. That's interesting. Obviously, this makes sense. 8A sole source, it should just be 1, I would imagine, but there's some differentiator in there, 1.04. So top set-aside offices, this IBC acquisition service, Department of the Interior, 11.5 million, 8 awards to 8A. And the VA New Jersey office had 4 SDVOSB awards. Why does that matter? Well, the reason it matters is because relationships matter in government contracting, right? So we need to establish rapport with these offices. You better believe if I'm an SDVOSB business, I am an SDVOSB business, although I don't sell these services. But if I was selling these type of services, I would be absolutely targeting the VA and this New Jersey office. I would be setting up, but I could go right now, find the small business office associated with this and start setting up meetings. Better find a opportunity and like a source of sought something early and set up a meeting with the office that's associated with that. Okay. Let's see here. Yep. Mark, agree. And let's see, Ray says, do contracts for local and state agency act similar to Fed agencies? Roy, I would love to tell you yes, but the answer is no. So here's the thing. State and local are not governed by the federal acquisitions regulations. So this is something that you just need to understand. Sometimes they can look similar, but they are not, it does not function the same way. So every state has a different procurement way of doing things, procurement systems. Even sometimes the localities, right? Towns and stuff have different procurement systems. Some states are more synced up than others, but each one's different. So when we're talking about federal agencies, I can tell you exactly what's going on in the federal agencies because it's all FAR-based and the systems that record all of the contracting information are the same. The agencies they do have their own policies, right? So there are some differences between the agencies, surely, but the way they have to put companies, they all have to follow the same law. Okay, and it's recorded the same. So we can look at federal selling to federal agencies as one system, but when you're looking at states, you could have 50 different systems for state. It becomes very complicated. So I only teach and stick to what I know, which is federal. Hopefully that gives you some insight there. So again, now if we're going and taking a look at the competition breakdown, full and open is most of this. So 675 million is full and open competition. Average number of offers for full and open, 3.5, 504 awards. Full and open after exclusion, 91 million. Okay. And exclusion could be a variety of things, set-asides, something else. Not competed at all, 112 million. This is another word for sole source, right? Average number of offers, 1, because it wasn't competed. It could be any reason for not competed, right? And now we're also relying on the data that's being given to us for this. But simplified acquisitions, 70, right? So, sorry, no. Awards 70 with 1. So it could be that your company or the company awarded, they're the only ones that can do the work. That's a justification for not competing something. Here's SAP right here, simplified acquisitions, 42 awards, 2.8 average offers, 7 point. So not a lot. I mean, 7.7 million is not a lot of spending from the government. So there's some there, but okay. So 75% of spending is competed. But there's significant volume in non-competed in simplified acquisitions. I would say that simplified acquisitions is probably the least of this, but per the chart here. But yeah, teaming, unique capabilities, targeting smaller awards through local offices. Those are all great ways to especially get your foot in the door. What are the subcontracting insights here? We can see a lot of individual subcontracting plans are required. It's just good to know. So if that may be subcontracting in this case, may be something that I want to work into my strategy, right? Let's see here. Oh, this is interesting. So time and materials, that makes sense. Time and materials contracts and firm fixed price are about the same, except that for firm fixed price contracts, there's a hell of a lot more of them. But as far as spending is concerned, they're about the same. By the way, guys, these numbers can change. Remember, federal spending, the reporting for federal spending, there's a lag. So even though I'm looking at FY24, and remember the fiscal year ends at the end of September, begins the beginning of October. So we're about to end here. This, by the way, if you are selling to the government, sorry about that. There we go. If you're selling to the government, there's going to be a mad scramble right now for most agencies to spend their FY25 dollars, fallout funds, and any funding that's tied to this year. They are trying to put that all on contract by the end of September. And a lot of the agencies have less people, right? So they're always taxed. It's always a mad scramble, but it's just going to be getting busier as we hit the end of September. So if you are selling to the government, if you already have your contracts in place, if you're trying to sell more, like make sure you're asking your program manager in the federal agency about fallout funds, and hey, is there anything set aside for special projects that you could potentially take advantage of? So you want to understand that. Okay, so we talked about the pricing models here a little bit. What do we got here? So the earnings trajectory, again, comparing to the other code, we've got some subcontractor entry and prime task award entry. So year one, 250 to 600K, 1 million to 2.5 million. For prime, year two, you could start increasing that 2.5 to 6, and then 5 to 10. But guys, this is predicated upon the fact that you are following a strategy based on federal spending. You're targeting the right offices. You're aligning yourself with the way that they spend. Because if you're not, it's not going to work out. And you can start under a subcontracting plan if it makes sense for your business, right? Because what are you selling? What is the service? What is the specific opportunity that you're going after? So, and this is kind of reiterating what I've already said, target the right offices. Know if you have a certification or set aside, certain offices are going to be more likely to buy from you. SDV, OSB, and the VA is an example. And of course, here, the spending backs it up. Subcontracting, yes, if it makes sense for your business, but we saw a large part of these contracts have the plans in place. 8A was used pretty significantly with some offices, so you want to target those offices. Early positioning, by the way, is always what you want to do. Almost. The only thing I could think of where early positioning may not matter is in some reselling models where the government's selling, cheap, products essentially, and you're trying to sell massive amounts of those. You're going to see less things like sources sought associated with those, unless like there's maybe a massive contract, that's coming down. So, okay, we'll hit some of the questions here. If you have any, you could put them in the chat. And I also wanted to bring up, let's see here, some of the comparison. Okay. We saw what FY24 had in the books, right? We saw how much they spent. We also saw those huge ceilings, right? So on a lot of those contracts, meaning a lot of the IDIQs and some of the contract vehicles, we saw large ceilings associated with those vehicles, which means there's a lot of spending left on those that is going to take place probably over the next few years. And you now combine that with the executive policy direction, right? So the AI infrastructure executive order, these are permitting incentives for high-powered data centers. We know that they're going to be spending money on this, right? It's going to be an ever-increasing amount of money. So we are not just projecting the increase of spending that we normally would be from past spending, but also the government is giving us their roadmap, their signals, like, hey, what's coming up? We've got the agencies are under pressure to align tech infrastructure and national security. They always are, right? So, if you look at stuff like, national security strategy, there are a variety of documents that the government is going to put out that you can read to get an idea of where we're going. Now, those don't always equal huge amounts of spending, but they are an indicator. So we want to understand that. Mission critical demands, these agencies that we see that are the top spenders, particularly like DOD, NASA, like the AI demand is just going to go up and up for all of the agencies. So, if you're aligned with these type of services, you're going to, I think, be in a good position to bring in some of that money. But you want to be really smart about this. You want to really understand, how is the government doing the buying? We only touched on some of the data that's really important here. Of course, fiscal year is coming to an end. So if you're already involved in the process, you want to see if fallout funds are something that you guys can take advantage of before the end of September, right? Usually I start in May if I'm talking with the agencies in the offices. And the reason I do that is when I was an acquisitions officer, that's May, June. That's when we'd know, like, hey, what do our fallout funds look like? And we'd usually rack and stack all the pet projects that everyone had. So you want to get your pet project on that list if you have the ability to do so. What can we see here on the comparisons between the two codes? I think you guys may or may not want to see that, but essentially DC01, the Data Support Center, we saw 913 million spent last year. DB01, which was the support services for these types of centers, 401.6 million. So a little bit less, about roughly a little less than half the spending. But the ceiling value on the contracts for data center support was 25 billion, whereas for the HPC support services, 28.8 billion. So the actual, even though less was spent last year, the ceiling on these contracts are higher. So that could indicate that there's going to be increased spending where it could level off as the years go by here. Total awards, twice as many awards for DC01, 871 versus 430 for the support services for HPC. The average award size for DC01 was slightly higher at 1.6 million than 1.4 million for HPC. And the average number of offers for DC01 was slightly less at 2.7, but they're both low competition as far as I'm concerned. Again, remember, only a percentage of the actual contracts had offers associated with them, right? But the ones that did, 2.7 for DC01 and 2.8. That means for when a solicitation, an RFP came out, said, hey, we request a proposal, that means on average, they received 2.8 proposals, right? So sometimes they received 2, sometimes they received 1, sometimes 5, but it all averaged out to 2.8, 2.7, very close, right? It tells us we're kind of aligned here. For DC01, so look, Department of Defense was clearly, for both categories, was the top purchaser. Although for the HPC services, we saw NASA and the Department of State, whereas in data center, we saw a Department of Homeland Security and the VA were higher spenders in those categories, right? Anything else that really stands out here? I mean, 8A was a top set aside used, but still, like with neither of them, it wasn't like 50%, 30%, 20% of the awards were going to set asides, right? So you can use it, know which agencies use it, but it's probably not going to be your only strategy. We did see a difference in contract types between the two. Small business set aside, I think, is probably the better approach with Data Support Center, DC01, if you're a small business, versus probably teaming and subcontracting in the other one. And of course, I'm just reading kind of the metrics here. And let's see, as far as FY25 growth forecast, both pretty similar. Although we do think there's going to be a surge in DB01, but both of them are being forecasted by the administration as increasing. Let's see here. Do you think companies that construct training programs and packages will be primed for contracts? It depends. Depends on what those training programs and packages are, right? Like, is your training program just like a slide deck that you put together, or is your training program an in-person training program? What's it targeted at, right? Training, the government spends a lot of money on training, and I didn't go over any of it here, but you can do the research. And by the way, I could just plug that couple of those codes in and give you a very similar breakdown really, really quickly. And I would do that, by the way. If you're interested in selling those kind of training programs, I would know exactly what the government spends money on And that's what you want to go after, right? And just read the tea leaves, folks, right? With training, like for instance, 2 years ago, training centered on DEI probably would have been a decent approach to the government. But right now we know that it's probably not, right? Because we're listening to what they're trying to reduce and what they're trying to get rid of and what they're going to be focusing on. I would imagine cybersecurity, things like that are going to be a high level of spending. But again, I would have to do the research. I'm just guessing. Let's see here. Ray said, I need to understand the acronyms you're throwing out. Oh, God. Roy, what acronyms, which ones do you want some understanding on? Because I know I throw a lot of them out. When I start talking government contracting, my wife walks right out of the room. Even like just me talking to military guys, there's like a set of acronyms for the military. There's a set of acronyms for contracting, probably for some of the things that you guys are doing. And so if I say anything that you guys don't understand, just let me know. Oh, Roy, I know LOL. I know that one. Let's see here. I'm going to go through some of the questions. Are there any specifics when applying as an individual contractor? Well, yeah, there are. But what specifically are you asking me? We go over the approach. In my philosophy, folks, for anyone that's been watching our YouTube content, you'll know my philosophy for 99% of contracts that you're going to go out there and win, whether you're a prime or a sub, whether you are an independent contractor or you're like a new contractor, you've been doing this for a while. We want to find opportunities as far ahead of the solicitation as possible. A solicitation is when the government puts out something called a request for proposal or a request for quote. That's when you actually write a proposal, submit it, and the government says, hey, yay or nay, and you win the contract, right? That's not where, again, 99% of people selling to the government, that is not where you are starting. That's at the end of the process. So people that understand how to win contracts start as far ahead of that as possible in something called the market research phase. So we are finding opportunities like a sources sought. That's when the government's just putting out, something saying, hey, I have money and a requirement, and I have a bunch of questions about how I'm going to put this on contract. So it could be someone asked a question about training. It could be for training. And it might be like, hey, businesses, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Rick Howard, and we have funding and a requirement for cybersecurity training or AI training. And I just need to understand like these 5 questions and like, what are your best practices? And that's where you have the opportunity to say, hey, Lieutenant Colonel Howard, I've been doing training for 10 years and my best practices are A, X, Y, and Z. And by the way, whoever you hire should probably have these certifications and maybe this past performance. And if you're on a contract vehicle like GSA, hey, you could award this on GSA. There's a lot you could pack in there. And you'd be surprised how much of that can end up in the solicitation, meaning the request for proposal. And if it does, when that comes out, because you engaged early, it might say, hey, we want people that are, the way we're scoring these proposals is we want you to have this certification. And it's been, by the way, we set this aside for a woman-owned small business. And we think you should have past performance in these agencies. Basically, all of those things that they put in there are going to help your company win and eliminate your competition if they don't have that past performance, that certification, or if they're not a WOSB, right? Where can you look for individual contracts? Go to usaspending.gov and go to, are you watching this on YouTube? I think you are. I just can see the YouTube thing. If you're watching this on YouTube, go to my YouTube channel, okay, and look up anything that I've done on sam.gov or USA Spending. And actually, if you look at some of the live sessions I've done recently, I go really in depth on how to use those 2 tools. They're free. They are government contracting tools. Okay. And they're not perfect, but they can show you the individual contracts that have been awarded. So USA Spending, just think of that as historical research, right? I want to see everything the government has awarded, has spent money on. SAM.gov is where you're going to find active solicitations, meaning, hey, I can write a proposal and potentially win. That's where you register your business to sell to the government. That's also where you can find, what I advise you to do is find sources sought or requests for information, which are going to give you that's gonna put you ahead of the solicitation and give you enough time to start setting up your relationship with that government office. It's more work, but that's really where this type of thing is going to be won. Just to give you guys a sense of this. Oh, no worries, no worries. I'm gonna just show you guys something real quick here that I think is really important. You guys may not think is as important as I do. Let me share my screen here. Again, actually, let me get that one off, and then I'll get off the stage. Maybe I'll bring up USA Spending if you need to see it, but I think that it'd be better just for you to go to the video that I've already done. And I've done a lot of them, by the way. Hold on a second. Here we go. All right. I said, here we go, and I was wrong. It didn't, I have to reshare my screen again. It's just the way it works. All right. You guys should be seeing a spreadsheet right now. I just wanted to give you an idea of like how much information I didn't put into those slide decks, right? Just because I didn't want to overwhelm anybody. These are the awarding sub-agencies for one of the codes, how much they spent, the average number of offers received per sub-agency, and the awards, right? So we can see, just going right down the list here, how much they spent, average number of offers. This gives us incredible detail. And, you know, when we were talking about trying to be precise with government contracting, like we want to know, like, what is the sub-agency? What's the office, right? What if I want to know the top offices, right? This is the same exact list. Now we're not talking Air Force. We're talking, you know, what is the office at Hanscom Air Force Base that is doing the spending, and how many offers and how many awards? And of course, you know, we have algorithms that sort through, that first of all produce this data, but then, you know, how do you sort through it? I mean, look at these, each one of these is an office that has, you know, just a handful of people in it. All right. So now we're not talking about, if you go to USA Spending, part of the problem is you could say, all right, for this particular code that has, you know, data center support services, right, that are going to support this AI infrastructure that we need. It might tell you that the Department of Defense is the top spender, and it will. And then it might tell you that the Navy is the sub-agency, but the Navy is a enormous organization with thousands of offices and hundreds of thousands of people. Like, who do you target? Well, these, by the way, most people in these in the government agencies can't buy anything, right? So what you actually want to do, what you actually want to know is, what is the office? These are all offices, by the way. I can find out where each one of these offices is. Here's an FDA office. These all have a base, a street address, a location, email addresses, phone numbers, USAID. This isn't USAID, the organization. This is the office, probably office of the CIO, CDC, acquisition services. And you can see how many awards and average number of offers coming in, right? So here's one. This contracting division has 11 offers coming in per solicitation, 37 awards, versus, you know, look at this one. What does this tell me? So, I mean, guys, information's power. The Naval Air Warfare Center Air Division with, what is this? $77 million in spending, 98 awards, average number of offers, 1. So that either means they're sole sourcing to a bunch of different companies. They could be sole sourcing to one company. You know, that's a lot of awards and no competition, right? So these are the type of things that you really need to dig into. But once you understand it, you can be very, very effective. Just to give you a little bit there. I know my screen's all over the place here. Here we go. All right, let's turn to some questions before we close for the day. Jump back on there. I think I got to a lot of these already. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, Roy, the acronyms. Again, I'll try to spell the acronyms a little bit better. Just going through here. Yes, Mark, we do have to read the tea leaves. And that's just paying attention. Where can you go to read the tea leaves? I read all the executive orders that come out from the White House. I read the national security strategy. I read, federal news networks are a good place to go. They have a lot of news that is specific to government contracting. There are several places. You can even ask ChatGPT, like, hey, what are some of the latest news stories that might be affecting government contracting, and get a good sense. That was probably the easiest way, actually. Oh, that's right. Now, you asked where you could find the individual contracts. Again, sam.gov for things to bid on, USA Spending to do historical research. That spreadsheet did not come from the GovSpend website. That spreadsheet, I have a tool that I've built, which basically analyzes all the federal data over different years. It's all indexed, and then I can run specific queries on that data to give me the type of responses. So it's, some of the stuff you can get from USA Spending. So what can you get from USA Spending? You can get top awarding agencies. You can get the total amount spent, and you can reduce it. You can get enough in USA Spending for free. You just got to get used to clicking around in there. You can look at total small business awards. You can look at what set-asides are used. It is going to be much harder to get things like an average of the, what am I trying to say here? It's going to be hard to see how many offers are coming in per solicitation. You can check each contract line by line and see how many offers came in, or if they even put anything in there. But to actually do what we're doing, where we're saying, hey, these are the number of offices, these are the number of offers, these are the number of, that's hard to do. It doesn't break it down by office either. Let's see here. This person, you can share your contact info or LinkedIn, would chat with you about programs. Very helpful. Thank you. How much is my training? Our training depends on if you pay for it up front. And it's not, I don't even qualify it as training. It's an implementation program. So we have a 1-year program for those of you that aren't familiar. It's called GovClose. It's the GovClose certification program. Essentially, the first part of our training is, I just said it's not training, but the first part of this is selling to the government, right? So I onboard everybody personally. Then we do have digital training. We have weekly coaching. We have 2 weekly coaching calls, and we have a lot of deliverables that are due. And I make sure everybody that goes through actually understands what they're doing and knows how to analyze data the way I just broke it down, so they can develop their own plan, sell to the government, manage a pipeline, right? We have our own CRM. How do you take a source of SOT and turn that into an awarded contract? That's very precise, right? And that's what we want everybody to do. We want them to know the steps. There's actually not like 5 steps. There's like 20 steps. If I'm working and I want to know what strategy it is, right? So is it a subcontracting strategy? Well, then that's going to be a different pipeline than, say, if I'm using GSA, or if I have an 8A graduated targeting strategy. So there's a lot of different strategies, simplified acquisitions. It just depends. How does the government buy what you sell? Equals the strategy, equals the pipeline. And then we move those through. And so that's what we're teaching in the program. If I was, let's see here, I'm going to remove that. And I'll show you right here. I'll show you guys where to go. Maybe I'll show you where to go. Seems like I have to click like 40 different things here just to, there we go. So here's govclose.com. You can go here. Basically, if you go in and just click watch the free training, you will have to give your email, but you'll get an overview of the program. We can send you the syllabus, and you'll also be given a place where you can schedule a call with one of our advisors. They can walk you through the program. These guys are going through the program, and gals, they're doing a couple different things, right? So you could be a company that wants to sell to the government, and you'll learn the government contracting process, and I'll make sure you won't get out of it until you do. A lot of the people going through the program are starting consulting businesses or have them. So they want to learn government contracting and how to build a business, because that's the last part. And then a percentage are going after account executive jobs. And they're crushing it because what they're able to do is they're able to walk into a company and they can tell the company, like what I just did for you guys, and these HPC support services, AI infrastructure, you could get really, really detailed and walk into a company, whether it's a consultant, account executive, or even as a business owner, say, hey, look, you're selling, satellite, technology that, communicates with the ground. It's this new thing. This is how much the government spent. These are the agencies. This is the average number of awards. These are the contract vehicles they're on. Like, you walking through the whole thing, not many people can do that. So you're learning that. And then the real thing at the end of this is we want you to be able to generate revenue. The whole reason, like, nobody just learns government contracting because they think it's fun. The whole point, and most of you guys are watching this because you want to generate revenue. So you either have a business and you want to win contracts, or you are working for a business and you're trying to win contracts for that business. Or maybe you have a consulting company, which means you're still working for a business and you're trying to win contracts for that business. We have to generate results, and that is really our program. So hopefully that answers your question. It's very community heavy. It's a lot of one-on-one time with myself, and it's all about getting results. So it's not for everybody. It's not cheap. So now let's see here. What are some of the other questions here? Let's see. USA spending is very helpful. Yeah, no, it is. We already saw that one. Is there a way to get trained in FedRAMP? Joe, our program touches on FedRAMP, but it's not a deep dive on FedRAMP. I could train you on FedRAMP to a certain extent. And then more importantly, I guess, is why do you want to learn about FedRAMP? Do you want to learn about FedRAMP because you have a product or solution that you want to get FedRAMP certified? Well, then I would put you with a FedRAMP specialist, that like a 3PAO or something, somebody that does that for companies. You can reach out to me, send me an email, rick@govclose.com, and I can put you with someone. Let's see. Yeah, Theodore, good point. That website does have 5 different training modules. It also has, I love going through that website because it shows you how many times companies have been authorized. It can give you a timeline, like it gives you an understanding of who's sponsoring companies, how they're getting, to a certain extent, how they're getting authorized, and the timelines involved. There's a lot of information there. So that's probably a good point, Theodore. Go to that website. Thank you. Can your program count SCPs for other certifications? Not to my knowledge. This program is designed for one thing: help you make money selling to the government, either as a business, as a consultant, or as an account executive. Let's see. Roy, do you assist your GovClose clients, their strategy or target audience to start their business? Yes. So the back half of our program, Roy, that's, by the way, I'm going to put the GovClose website in the chat here for anyone that wants to check it out. The back half of our program, so after you get past the government contracting piece and the advanced strategies and the road mapping, then we have our modules on starting a business, bringing on clients if you're looking to do this as a consultant, and actually very in-depth, because we also get into things like marketing and proposal writing and things like that. So there's a whole business path. And you can see on GovClose, you can either go to the website or the YouTube channel, even my LinkedIn profile. You'll see a lot of our graduates there. There's some testimonials. You'll get a sense of, and there's some on here that, like Theodore, went through the program. So you'll see who's getting results, what they're doing. It's a great way to generate wealth if you understand the process. Hopefully that helps. Let's see here. Oh, and that's me. All right. Well, guys, thanks for coming in today. We will see you next time.
After going through the course, I was able to land a client that pays me a monthly retainer to actually help them develop their business and go after these federal contracts.
I was able to get a consulting gig with a software company that currently works with the intelligence community.
Within 2 months, I have my first client. So the initial contract was for a 3-month contract for $4,000 a month.
So 27 years old, you've never worked in government contracting, you've never worked as a consultant, and you just closed your first deal. Is that correct?
That's fair. And I've got a couple small projects on the side as well. So definitely probably my best investment I've made all year.
A cold call landed a 9-figure government contract.
Start a consulting business and a high salaried position as a account executive in public sales. So you're doing both of those things.
I'm living the best of both worlds right now.
So my name is Mike Knickerbocker. I am a naval officer that's getting ready to retire. Right now, I have 3 firm clients and 2 more perspectives. I'm able to provide value across different industries because the skill set that I learned through the course, I was able to apply my own experience.
GovClose came and it was a no-brainer. I wanted some secret sauce.
This has allowed me to live in Germany. It's a little hazy today, but we can do that. You see?
Oh yeah, dude, that's beautiful.
The content, the training, it's invaluable. It's rigorous.
And Deb, what motivated you to join the GovClose certification program?
Wow. Well, I think that wanting to work with a leader in the field, someone who understands government contracting on a deep basis and has the reputation, the experience working with you and your company was a natural.
The students that graduate our program, they go on to start their own consulting firms, winning high dollar consulting clients. They go on to land high-paying salaried positions as account executives with companies that sell to the government. I'm so proud of the people that have gone through our program. And if you are considering either a job or a business, and by the way, some of our students are doing both, as I did. They're running a consulting business and they'll have an account executive job. It's transforming their lives. It's bringing true wealth to them and their families. Back to the video.